It happened on a Saturday evening, November 26, 1977. Across southern England, hundreds of thousands of people settled in for the early evening news on Southern television. Back then, television worked differently. Broadcasts were transmitted through massive relay towers, towering steel structures that sent UHF signals directly to household antennas. There was no encryption, no digital authentication, just raw analog signals floating invisibly through the air. The most important of these towers in the region was the Hannington transmitter, covering parts of Hampshire, Berkshire, and Surrey. Nearly 500,000 people relied on it for their nightly programs. Then, at exactly 5:10 p.m., the picture began to distort. The newsreader's voice vanished, and something else faded in.
Ashtar Galactic Command speaking to you. For many years, you have seen us as lights and experiments.
The voice was calm, almost gentle, claiming to speak on behalf of an extraterrestrial alliance warning humanity of its own self-destruction. For nearly 6 minutes, viewers across the region sat frozen in silence, unable to change the channel or turn off the message. Engineers at the station were powerless. Their signal had been hijacked by a stronger one, directly targeted at the Hannington relay. When the message finally ended, the regular newscast resumed, as if nothing had happened. In the days that followed, authorities and broadcast engineers launched a full investigation, yet no source was ever found. At that time, the Hannington transmitter was an unusual one. It was one of the few transmitters that rebroadcast an off-air signal from another transmitter, the IBA's Row Ridge transmitter on the Isle of Wight. As a consequence, it was open to this kind of signal intrusion. Even a relatively low-powered transmission close to the rebroadcast receiver could overwhelm its reception. The British press, however, had a field day. Headlines like "Alien Voice Breaks into TV Broadcast" and "ET Calls England" dominated newspapers across the country. Southern television was flooded with letters, some angry, some terrified, others simply curious. A few even claimed to have received similar messages through their home radios or in their dreams that same night. While most people laughed it off as a prank, others took it seriously. UFO research groups like Bufora, the British UFO Research Association, began collecting witness statements. Some believed the broadcast wasn't a warning at all, but a test of contact, the first step in something larger that never came. For many who experienced it, the Vrillon broadcast became an early example of how easily people could believe a message simply because it came through a trusted medium. Back then, television was seen as the truth. If it was on TV, it had to be real. That's what made the event so powerful and so frightening. Some people genuinely believed the transmission and started to make arguments for its validity. That strange multi-tonal sound has led some to speculate that the audio was generated using early synthesizers, but people argued it sounded too advanced for the technology at the time. Over the years, the legend only grew. UFO enthusiasts began connecting Vrillon to the mysterious Ashtar Command, to a supposed extraterrestrial alliance that first appeared in American contactee stories from the 1950s. Those messages also called for peace, disarmament, and spiritual awakening. Similar themes to the Hannington broadcast. By the 1980s and 1990s, the Vrillon incident entered conspiracy lore. It showed up in UFO documentaries, radio specials, and early internet forums. Some even claimed that NASA had received similar Galactic Command transmissions but kept them classified. No proof ever surfaced, but the story still persisted. And in a way, that's what makes the Vrillon broadcast so fascinating. It's not just a mystery of who or what caused it, it's a reflection of a time when faith and technology collided with fear of the unknown. The 1970s were full of contradictions. The Cold War paranoia and spiritual optimism, scientific progress. The Vrillon message managed to capture all of that in just 6 minutes of static and words. Even today, recordings of the transmission are studied, remixed, and reinterpreted. Some treat it as a historical curiosity, others a genuine communication from beyond. But no matter what theory you believe, one fact remains. For one night, in 1977, someone or something managed to make the entire south of England stop, listen, and wonder if humanity had just received its first interstellar warning. But what did the broadcast actually say? Well, the broadcast sounded more like a sermon than anything. The voice states that humanity needs to put down its weapons of evil, which was a rather topical subject at the time of the Cold War when this hijacking happened. Later, the voice states that humanity only has a short time to learn to live together, which was a more concerning message, What exactly was the voice trying to insinuate? What danger is humanity so close to succumbing to? Was the voice making a threat in this moment? But even more curious is the mention of something called the Age of Aquarius. The Age of Aquarius was a huge cultural and spiritual idea in the late 1960s and 1970s, especially among people involved in counterculture, New Age, and hippie movements. It mixed astrology, mysticism, and optimism about a coming new era of human enlightenment and peace. The concept comes from astrology, where human history is divided into long periods called astrological ages. Each age corresponds to one of the zodiac signs and lasts roughly around 2,000 years, based on the slow movement of the Earth's axis, a phenomenon called the precession of the equinoxes. The world had been in an age of Pisces, associated with religion, sacrifice, and faith for the past 2 millennia. The Age of Aquarius was said to be the next great age, a time of knowledge, brotherhood, freedom, and technological progress. This lines up with the last message about disarming ourselves. Everything set up to this point just sounds like hippie New Age rhetoric that was popular at the time. Nothing particularly extraterrestrial. But then the voice says this: "For many years you have seen us as lights in the skies." This statement creates a direct tie to UFO footage and sightings, claiming to be the ones responsible, which almost seems too convenient. Then the message claims that our chance may not come again, which is extremely vague. Why exactly is this a time of utmost urgency? Is it referring to the New Age of Aquarius, or something more severe? Some believe it was the work of a group of pirate radio operators in the 1970s. Short-range hijacks were possible if you had the right equipment and knew which relays to target. Still, for a signal this clean and powerful, others argue it would have required military-grade transmitters. Another theory suggests that it was a military transmission test, that the British government may have been running a classified emergency broadcast system that accidentally went live, but no documentation of a test has ever surfaced. A few of the engineers thought it was an inside job, suggesting someone at the station inserted the audio manually. However, Southern Television later confirmed that none of their equipment could patch an external audio source into an active UHF broadcast. In the 1990s, several declassified documents revealed that both the UK and US governments had considered using broadcast media to test public reaction to simulated extraterrestrial contact. Could Vrillon have been one of those messages? If you were to ask me, I think the first and last theories are the most plausible. Radio technology at the time was relatively easy to hijack for those with the knowledge and know-how, though the equipment required for this would have required something of a scale that would be beyond the means of the average citizen. That points to the possibility of a government-run test, but who knows? One thing I am personally certain of is the human element of this broadcast. Look back at the contents of the message. The mentioning of the Age of Aquarius is a big giveaway. Why would an extraterrestrial race know anything about astrology? Astrology is mostly a human invention. Astrology is not like mathematics or physics, which can be a constant across the galaxy. It makes no sense that they would know anything about the concept unless they actively seeked out the subject when visiting Earth, which is a stretch to say the least. Not only that, but the concept of the Age of Aquarius was a popular concept in the hippie movement at the time, so it's very likely that the hijacker could have been into such ideas. But beyond the Age of Aquarius, there are some other tells that hint to a human hijacker. If this message was from aliens looking to contact humanity as a whole, then why was this message only sent to the Huntington Relay? Why wasn't this message sent to the entire world? To me, it seems like someone saw a weakness in the Huntington Relay and took advantage of it so they could preach their hippie message under the guise of an alien intervention. The thing that makes this case so compelling is the fact that no one took credit, no one was arrested, and no transmitter capable of producing an override was ever found. 47 years later, the identity of Vrillon remains a mystery. So, which of these theories do you believe? Was it a pirate broadcast, a classified experiment, or was the message exactly what it claimed to be? Whatever the case, the voice of Vrillon has never returned, but the transmission still lingers in the minds of those who heard it.